Sounds good. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for starting your day with what I hope will be a fun and engaging conversation about the evolution of innovative technology around us. My name is Corey Brenner, and I'm the Channel Marketing Manager at Digi International, spearheading our dynamic co-marketing initiative. It's my pleasure to talk to everyone here today about new 4G opportunities and the future of connectivity. I'm honored to be joined by an incredibly smart and talented panel of speakers today. Harald Remmert is the Senior Director of Technology here at Digi International and the driving force behind our leap into the world of 4 and 5G. And of course, Randy De Silva, the Technical Account Manager at SAPPLY. To kick off today's presentation, I'll give a high-level introductory look at the evolution of technology as it pertains to your position on the adoption curve and the Australia-New Zealand 3G shutdown slated for 2024. Next, Harald will jump into a deeper explanation of LTE technology, discussing IoT applications, spectrum usage, and how to build your best path to 4G and beyond. Then finally, Randy will illustrate how SAPPLY and Digi are joining forces to deliver innovative solutions all throughout Australia, as well as the greater APAC region. As we wrap things up, there should be time for discussion at the end, but we do hope to also encourage and take on some interactive polls and questions throughout the presentation. So if you do have any immediate questions, feel free to drop a note in the chat section and we'll be sure to address it as time permits. Now let's get started by telling you just a little bit about who we are at Digi International. For those of you new to Digi, we've been around since 1985. And over the past 35 years, we've consistently adapted to fit changing times and technological demands. Our deep expertise in wireless networking and IoT has helped us build solutions for over 35,000 customers across all corners of the globe and even beyond, with NASA utilizing the Digi Connect Core to help their Robonaut 2.0 navigate the International Space Station. It goes without saying that a lot has changed over the last 35 years, especially in the world of technology. From dial-up internet in the early 90s to our current era of connected mobile devices and smart refrigeration units capable of optimizing conditions for the critical COVID-19 vaccines. Incidentally, much of modern technology has been made possible by the invention of Wi-Fi, which I actually just learned was developed by a group of Australian astronomers at the CSIRO. So, thank you. Looking over this timeline, it's important to note that some of these times may vary based on region and release definition. But generally speaking, the gap between 3G and 4G was incredibly significant, whereas the jump to 4G to 5G took less than half that time. Technology is moving at a much faster pace than it ever has before. When 3G became available, nobody was even thinking about 4G. But as soon as we hit 4, people were already wondering about 5G and what would come next. As we've seen day in and day out, this drive to increase speed and efficiency has never had a greater priority than it does right now. In order to meet this demand and provide a faster, more responsive network for their customers, carriers need to update their spectrum with the newer, more efficient cellular solutions. This means that in order to accommodate the advancement of new technology, carriers must first retire outdated devices and create cellular availability by removing 2G and 3G infrastructure. The main reason for these network shutdowns is that carriers have limited spectrum available for expansion. This is what's happening on a national scale in Australia and New Zealand as carriers look to transition out of 3G into the versatile functionality of 4G LTE. June 2024 will be the official shutdown in Australia. Now, if you think about the remaining lifespan in terms of working business days, 2024 may seem far away, but it's actually approaching much faster than you might think. If we're having this conversation September 23rd, and assuming you want to take a few days off for, I don't know, weekends and holidays, that actually only leaves about 650 days until the shutdown hits, give or take a few roaming holidays and PTO. But now let's account for lead time actual service activation, and ramping up new product implementation into the company toolkit. Consider all this, along with the fact that an effective shutdown of nationwide 3G will mean that if you are still trapped using outdated infrastructure, you may wind up stranded with zero available service for your business. Suddenly, 2024 doesn't seem so far away. Keep in mind, this is not about getting the fastest, most expensive internet imaginable. It's not about picking the best technology. It's about identifying the right fit for purpose within your company and selecting a forward-facing solution that will serve your business tomorrow and set your firm up for success in this next chapter on the technology timeline. Finding that right fit for purpose within a fluctuating environment is a challenge we've all faced before. I want to show you just a brief example of a time I focused fit and functionality in my own life. As you know, changing technology often means adjusting to new possibilities at the cost of leaving the past behind us. That's why in 2006, I had to get rid of my LG Envy, even though it had great functionality and I loved that tactile QWERTY keyboard. It simply couldn't deliver modern functionality, so I had to upgrade to a modern smartphone. Years later, I backed FX Tech, a smart company out of London, building a brand new competitive phone with a list of innovative features, including a Qualcomm Snapdragon processor, 12 megapixel camera, and of course, an absolutely beautiful slide-out QWERTY keyboard. For me, finding that balance in the right custom solution was integral for my own cellular experience. This dedication to building the right fit for purpose is exactly what Digi is built upon. Not in cell phones specifically, but in cellular routers, embedded solutions, and making sure that when we deliver a mission-critical IoT solution, it is exactly the right fit for who you are and what your business needs to succeed. In many ways, finding that perfect balance on a personal or corporate level can be summed up by where you fall on the early adoption curve. Individual preferences may vary based on specific market segment, reliance on communication, or risk adversity. However, with direct associations being drawn between early adoption and increase in market share, there are some undeniable advantages to incorporating new technology on the earlier end of this adoption curve. While some industries have already jumped into 4 and 5G with both feet, others are still managing copper phone lines and just starting to look at POTS replacement with voice over IP. Regardless of where exactly you fall in this chart, now is the perfect time to begin candidly defining valuable technological advances and necessities as they make sense, not just in the global scheme of things, but on a personal level for the greater well-being of your company and every single employee therein. This doesn't mean jumping in at the high-risk innovator stage. We're just talking about the difference between being in the early majority and the detrimental impact of missing market share by showing up late to the party. So I'd love to hear from the audience. Where do you think your company falls on this chart? And we should have a poll coming up here that you'll be able to fill in as you get a chance. As answers start to come in, we can see that a lot of different companies have a lot of different priorities and that no one solution is right for everyone. At the end of the day, that's why it's so crucial to find the right fit for your firm by leveraging your extensive experience and investing in opportunities not only for innovation, but in future-proofing your success as the nation transitions into 4G LTE and 5G solutions. And it looks like a lot of you wound up in the early adopter and early majority, which is certainly a good place to be as we look into the road ahead. And now to take a deeper look at that evolution path, I'm going to pass things over to Digi's Senior Director of Technology, Harald Remmer.
Thank you very much, Corey, for the great overview and the introduction. So when we look at technology, right? So there's a lot of technologies around, and you always have to figure out, well, what do I pick, right? And we're getting this question asked a lot. Should I pick 4G? Should I pick 5G? You know, can I wait? Should I pick this other thing? And the key questions, there's three key questions that you want to ask yourself. The first question is, what's my application? Know where you are and where your business is today and where you want to go in the next 5 years, because the technology that might be great today, you know, might not fit in 5 years from now. Likewise, a technology that might be great 5 years from now, right, might still be very in the very early stages. Then think about how today's or next generation's technology can help you to solve your business problem more effectively. Second, what are my bandwidth, data plan, latency, and availability needs? Is my data transferred in bursts or steady over time? Do I need to transfer a few bytes or several gigabytes per day? Do I need the data in real time or several seconds, minutes, hours of delay okay? Do I need connectivity on a campus, in a city, nationwide, or even do I have an application that requires worldwide connectivity? That's a big question to ask, because based on that, you know, technology might not be available in all regions throughout where you are. And then lastly, what are my environment, power, and connectivity needs? Is my equipment in an AC-controlled environment, or is it outside? Somewhere in Alaska with temperatures down to minus 50 degrees Celsius, or in Southern Australia with temperatures up to 50 degrees Celsius? Do I have AC power, or do I need to rely on solar or batteries? And the good news is there's some great evolution happening with 4G LTE that you can take advantage of that really works well with solar and batteries. And then do you need to be always connected? Does downtime mean loss of revenue or penalties? That would then drive how you want to connect, and if you maybe want to have dual connectivity. So when we look at the history of technology, 2G and 3G technologies were linear with a one-size-fits-all model. So you had a 2G modem, a 2G device, you had a 3G modem, a 3G device, and it was pretty much the same, right? So you didn't really have a lot of differentiation relative to the technology. And you also had a couple bands, right? And that was it. When 4G LTE started, it was no different. But as part of the 4G evolution, today's 4G is much more diverse, with more bands available, and with more options when it comes to connectivity. And so today, we're really at a fork in the road. If we turn left, we can leverage Gigabit LTE for high-speed applications. If we turn right, we can leverage 4G LTE optimized for IoT applications. And so this purpose-built technology for these different applications is really one of the things that sets 4G apart. And then 5G would take that even one level further. Next, let's take a turn left and look at Gigabit LTE first, and then the evolution from 4G to 5G. As technology evolves, products evolve with it as well. At the low end, as we've already heard, 2G and 3G products and networks have gone away or are going away and getting replaced by 4G LTE, LTM, and IoT products. In the mid-range, 4G LTE provides proven and cost-effective solutions today. Then at the high end, within 4G, we have Gigabit LTE products also here today, and they will get complemented with 5G gigabit products and 5G multi-gigabit products over the next years. And as technology and networks are in a constant state of change and evolution, device management and regular updates become even more important. So we talk a lot about LTE, right? And I must admit I haven't introduced what LTE stands for. So LTE stands for long-term evolution. And this is really the theme within 4G and beyond. Since its initial release in 2008, LTE has evolved and is continuing to evolve. 3GPP, which is the standards body behind cellular technology, releases a major update of the standard roughly every 3 years. To differentiate between major LTE releases, 3GPP has introduced marketing names such as LTE, LTE Advanced Pro, and LTE Advanced. Release 8 was the initial release for 4G LTE, so that was the foundation. Release 10 introduced technology called carrier aggregation, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is really key to increase the throughput and the speed of 4G. Release 13 was a milestone that introduced another key aspect that led to Gigabit LTE. And the release 15 was the first standard defining 5G. So what makes Gigabit wireless possible? Let's take a look on the next slide. In order to achieve Gigabit LTE speeds, we need 4 key ingredients. First, we need more RF channels. And spectrum is really the lifeblood of any RF communications. And these channels are combined with technology called carrier aggregation. And the way how to think about this is if you have a highway, you basically have multiple highways in parallel that can carry more vehicles. And also, to clear up a common misconception, carrier in this context means a piece of spectrum and not a mobile network operator. This carrier aggregation all happens at the radio level, so you don't need to worry about it. It's from your point of view, it's magic, but it's really great. The second key ingredient is higher auto modulation. It sounds like a lot. You might hear things like 256 QAM. And basically what that is it uses the spectrum more efficiently for the transportation of information. In our automotive model, you can compare that with a car versus a bus, right? So you can transport more people in a bus per vehicle than you can in a car. Third, you need more antennas. And you might hear things like 4x4 MIMO. MIMO stands for multiple input, multiple output. So this is kind of analogous to a multi-lane highway. And multiple antennas can transmit, receive data in parallel. And so that also brings the speed up. And lastly, more spectrum. So I covered this, mentioned this a little bit. So the existing spectrum is already pretty crowded. And as mentioned earlier, mobile network operators are shutting down their 3G networks to make room for 4G and even 5G. But that's not enough. We need new spectrum. And you will see some spectrum auctions, right? Or new spectrum will be made available. And this is really key to provide faster performance, and then also provide the spectrum has different attributes, right? So not every spectrum is the same. The lower the frequency, the farther the reach, the higher the frequency, the less of the travel. So by making this additional spectrum available within spectrum auctions, you within 4G and beyond, you get a much more capable network than what you had before within either the same spectrum or within the augmented spectrum. So in summary, on the fast path to Gigabit LTE, 4G LTE Advanced Pro is here today, and it's paving the way for 5G. One disclaimer is you might hear when we talk about Gigabit LTE, you might not see these speeds right away. And one thing I haven't mentioned yet, some people have fear that 4G LTE is going to be going away soon, right now that 5G is starting to get introduced, and that's not going to be the case. We believe that 4G LTE is going to be around for at least the next decade, thanks to a technology called dynamic spectrum sharing, or DSS. With DSS, the available spectrum can be used between 4G and 5G dynamically, giving 4G LTE products longevity and 5G early adopters early access to networks. Now, that was a high-speed path. Now let's take a right turn, the fork of the road, and look at great 4G LTE options for IoT. So we've picked four representative categories. So CAT, you might hear CAT 4, CAT 1. So CAT stands for category and is a characteristic of speed and functionality within the 4G LTE continuum. CAT 4 offers theoretical downlink speeds of 150 megabits per second, and it is great for applications like IoT routers connecting multiple devices. It might be overkill for most single devices for IoT applications. The good news is that CAT 4 is around since the initial release, so it's available everywhere. CAT 1 is a good fit for IoT applications that do require good connectivity, so something like 3G-like connectivity. So things like digital signage, retail kiosk ATMs, industrial controllers, security cameras. So it's a great fit. Like CAT 1, like CAT 4, it was also released in 2008. So it's also available where 4G is available. It's also globally available, which is also a big plus of this technology. Then when we look at, as we go further to the right, we'll see the speeds dropping to kilobits per second and in the low megabits. And so CAT-M or LTE-M is a good fit for traditional 2G IoT applications. And it's also very well suited for battery-powered IoT sensors. This category was defined in 2016, and it's not consistently available yet globally. So LTE-M, CAT-M is predominant in markets with early LTE adoption, for example, North America, Latin America, and parts of Asia, including ANZ. NB-IoT is even one step below that, and it's even better suited for battery-powered devices such as sensors. Similarly, it was defined at the same time as CAT-M, LTE-M, and the same disclaimers apply. But as you move from left to right, the devices also get much simpler, right? So the radio technology gets much simpler, which then translates into lower cost and, a technology that was probably not viable for a small sensor, right? It was just cost prohibitive. Now with 4G LTE, we have that option available. When we look at a quick look at 4G LTE for IoT in the ANZ landscape. So within Australia, we have Telstra offering LTE-M and NB-IoT. Vodafone is offering NB-IoT in select cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and Canberra. And Optus is offering NB-IoT nationwide. In New Zealand, Spark's offering LTE-M, and then Vodafone is offering both LTE-M and NB-IoT. So the good news here, you have some options available, and we also have products to support that. So in summary, actually going back one slide. In summary, so CAT 4, CAT 1 is a good fit for many applications, globally available. CAT-M, LTE-M, and NB-IoT, a great fit for sensor applications and applications that don't require the high bandwidth. All right, next. So cellular connectivity is a journey and not a destination. And 4G LTE provides a solid foundation from 4G for IoT all the way up to blazing fast 4G Gigabit LTE. So what can you do today? That's a question we're getting asked a lot. First, don't delay critical connectivity projects. Getting started is really the most important step in a digital transformation. And especially once you have a pilot project going, right? So once you have taken this first step, you have a champion that is driving this within your company. Then what we found repeatedly is that other parts of the organization will come and say, "Oh yeah, this is great. So can I do this with this, with that, or can I enable this other thing?" And so it's really important to getting started. Second, understand your 3G to 4G evolution path. You may now have multiple options to go from where you were with 3G to 4G. Third, work with a knowledgeable partner. Digi and SAPPLY are here to help guide you through your 3G to 4G evolution and beyond. And fourth, if you aren't already, think about remote device management. Any new technology, as well as security vulnerabilities, will require updates along the way. Be prepared. Rolling trucks is not a very good strategy for most businesses. And this is not just empowering your business for success today, but more importantly, preparing it for the future. So on this slide, I want to give you an example and make a point about how the right technology and the right connectivity, along with remote management, can be transformational. This is one of our projects we did during the last couple of years. So we partnered with our friends at AT&T to connect 14,000 intersections in one of the most populated cities in the US. I don't know how many of you have ever driven in the Big Apple or have seen crowded streets of Manhattan in movies, but those of you who have know it's far from ideal. Previously, the New York City Department of Transportation experienced an average of roughly 4,000 communication failures at intersections every single day. I repeat that, 4,000 communication failures at intersections every single day. So 1/3 of the intersections had some kind of communication issue. Imagine the amount of staff you need to have available, right? And the frustration that you might have from your citizens to get from point A to point B. Today, that number has plummeted to less than 10, with a 99.99% uptime availability, earning this application the award of Outstanding ITS Project of the Year by the Intelligent Transportation Society of New York. So this is really a significant transformation from a system that was very buggy, very faulty, to something that gets an award, right, and is now being replicated across cities within the United States and beyond. The New York City Department of Transportation is using Digi Remote Manager to manage all of these intersections. Digi Remote Manager is the command center of an intelligent network. It's the heart, and it provides centralized control, management, security, edge intelligence, and day-to-day network management for hundreds and thousands of distributed devices. Without this central management, New York City would still have to have manual interaction, right? They would still have to look for and maybe write custom scripts and things like that, right? To understand if an intersection is working or not, right? And then they have to figure out how to remediate that. When you have a system like Remote Manager, right? So you can make sure that very easily see which devices need attentions, which don't. You can remote access these devices and then remediate. You can also see if a device is out of compliance, right, and quickly get it into compliance. And then, imagine if you have to somewhat manual, semi-automated, do mass firmware updates and software updates on these many devices, right? And then figure out how to detect that the devices actually came back and everything worked, right? So that's just a daunting task, and Remote Manager can do this all automatically. And, all of this, of course, we've done the first implementation in the US, but all of this can be implemented locally by Supply, who's already helped to deliver a number of solutions together with Digi. So now I'll pass it on to Randy, and he will tell us more what Supply does and how we have been working together.
Thanks for that, Harold. Appreciate that. So first off, I'd like to welcome everyone again, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. So Supply are a value-add distributor servicing the Asia-Pacific region with operations in Sydney, Australia, Auckland, New Zealand, and Singapore. We have operated for over a decade, representing key global vendors, providing best-in-class solutions in cloud and data center networking, productivity, and a strong focus in the IoT market. So Supply have strategically partnered with Digi, obviously, to provide local expertise and support for their entire product portfolio, where we've focused primarily on their infrastructure management and IoT end-to-end products, and have delivered countless serial, USB, and cellular connectivity solutions to a variety of verticals, including federal and state government, healthcare, mining, and retail, just to name a few. But we're all here to talk about Australia and New Zealand's 3G shutdown and how to best prepare for your migration to 4G and understand the challenges ahead. So here at Supply, we have a wide array of technology specialists with backgrounds ranging from serial communications, RF, and networking, allowing us to consult on an entire project end to end. So I personally have a background in networking, but I can speak on behalf of our entire technology team when I say we prefer to get involved at the very start of the project to really understand the requirements and deliverables so that we can plan accordingly. We pride ourselves on taking a customer-oriented approach. So rather than forcing a generic cookie-cutter solution that may or may not be right for purpose, we'll take your required outcomes and functionality and work our way backwards to find the most suitable solution for you. And obviously keeping in mind any commercial and logistical factors as well. So with our combined years of experience, we'll know exactly what questions to ask and what considerations to make early on in the piece to make sure that there are no unwanted surprises during the planning and deployment phase of the project. A project that will most likely be critical to the everyday running of your business. So it seems to be the common theme of this entire presentation, but I'll say it again, the most important thing to remember with these sorts of projects is that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for every application, not if you want to do it right. There are obviously an infinite number of combinations when choosing the right 4G solution for a deployment, but trying to determine the right tool for the job can be quite overwhelming and daunting. So our techs and account managers will work with you, the customer, to understand the use case, what you want out of your cellular network, along with any other challenges you are facing as a business, so that we can tailor a solution that's right for you using Digi's extensive portfolio. After all is said and done, we'll be able to provide an end-to-end solution from power supply and antenna options to config requirements that ensure edge connectivity, all the way to advice on your core architecture and how it will all come together. But ultimately, the proof is in the pudding. So I'd like to give you an idea of some of the successes we've had in just a few of the verticals Supply works in. So the first example we've picked today is one in the utilities sector. So this one was quite a learning curve for all parties involved. Picture the scene, a hot summer's day, clear blue skies, everyone flocking to the shores to enjoy a typical Aussie beach day. But what no one realized was the concentration of mobile users at the beach forced critical comms equipment at substations nearby to get booted off or deprioritized on the cellular network, causing some serious headaches for network engineers at this particular utilities company. The challenge was simple. The customer needed the ability to switch seamlessly between carriers without dropping a beat, or in this case, a packet across their entire cellular network, all while being able to cope with the extreme heat of an Aussie summer. While there may be plenty of devices available in the market with out-of-the-box dual carrier or SIM functionality, these still cause disruption and downtime between edge devices and the core network. So after assessing the needs of the customer, the team at Supply recommended an industrial Digi solution that gave them the versatility to overcome their challenges, as well as developing a custom Python script to ensure failover between carriers was executed without disruption between the edge assets and the core SCADA network. Throughout the life of the project, Supply also introduced alternative models for sites that required fewer Ethernet ports for a cost-saving exercise as well. So we'll constantly work with a customer to ensure that they always have the right tool for the job. Now let's talk about the transport industry now. As Harold previously mentioned, Digi's LTE router portfolio is used extensively in intelligent transport systems, also known as ITS, across the globe, as well as right here in Australia. While Digi over in the States have successfully been involved in the upgrade of one of the most complex and sophisticated ITS networks in the world, New York City, Digi routers are also being used in a similar capacity over here. They provide connectivity for all manner of transport assets, including variable message signs, the large signs that you see across highways with public announcements such as traffic incidents, CCTV cameras for traffic monitoring, and pedestrian detectors so that street crossings are automatically activated without the need for physical buttons, yet another COVID-inspired initiative. All of these assets and more connect back to the core network via Digi's cellular routers whenever fiber infrastructure isn't available for edge connectivity. In this particular case, Supply were involved in every aspect of the project, from config requirements, initial proof of concept testing, documentation, and final provisioning prior to field deployment. We liaised between the department and their contractors to ensure all required stock, including peripherals, were held at Supply to meet delivery schedules, as well as working closely with Digi to ensure manufacturing lead times aligned with future requirements and orders. Our ability to coordinate critical customer deployments with Digi's manufacturing schedule allowed us to combat delays caused by global component shortages, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and ensure timely implementation of the project. So finally, we've worked with a global advertising agency who have approved Digi routers across all of their deployments globally. However, this particular customer hit a snag when the outdoor enclosures they were provided in the ANZ region were too small for the globally selected router of choice. So after careful consideration of their requirements, Supply were able to work with Digi and the customer to recommend a suitable alternative that met their form factor restrictions. Suitable power supplies and antennas were also scoped out and supplied in accordance with the application requirements. And with Digi's innovative product offering, not only were we able to provide a solution for the customer's specific problem, we actually improved the overall architecture of their edge connectivity with the use of Digi's core plug-in modem design. This core plug-in modem provides a scalable, future-proof upgrade path for upcoming cellular technologies, as the outdated modem can actually be unplugged and simply swapped over to a current model, potentially 5G, without any requirement to change the config on the device itself, making an upgrade quite seamless. And this is a really, truly unique differentiator in the market. So, as you can see from just a few of the different project examples, there are many possibilities when it comes to scaled migrations to 4G and many factors to consider. But Supply and Digi are here to work with you to find a solution that will work best for you. We'll provide you with the tools and planning to execute what will hopefully be a seamless deployment to the wonderful world of 4G LTE. A deployment that, if done correctly, will be cost-effective, low maintenance, secure, and efficient. And with that in mind, I think now is a great opportunity to open up the floor for questions. And thank you for your time. So, yeah. Any questions so far? No?
Thanks, Randy. It looks like if folks aren't in chat, people may be able to unmute and chime in. Otherwise, if there's the ability to have chat questions come in previously, we may have some questions before that we can answer as well.
So one of the questions that's come in is how we go to market and what the sort of structure is that we have in place. And Supply, as a distributor, I suppose I'll chime in for this one, will, generally speaking, always work with a partner for any requirement that's there. So whether it be brought to us with an end user, we'll work with contractors, we'll work with partners, and we'll work with end users to liaise between all the stakeholders involved to ensure that, you know, a deployment is done correctly and efficiently. And we've got a few more questions, actually. Corey, do you see those, or do you want me to announce them?
Yeah, I see questions popping in the Q&A section. So if there are folks who can't access chat, it looks like the button to the right of that Q&A will allow you to chime in with a question, and we'll get to them as they come in. Yeah, Randy, feel free to jump in with answers.
Yeah, go ahead. So look, we've got a Pete Bailey. What is the best IoT technology for coverage in agricultural regions in ANZ? And I guess Harold will be the most qualified to answer this, but just from a very high level, it always comes down to application. So there was quite a good slide from Harold talking about bandwidth requirements, coverage, what sort of assets are connecting, what you're hoping to do with the cellular network. So for example, if you want to have security cameras at a farm, you'll need a much higher category LTE module than, you know, Cat M1. You'll probably want Cat 4 or Cat 6. So yeah, it ultimately does come down to application. But that's the sort of stuff that we can talk about once a requirement is actually in front of us. So I think, Harold, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would like to add is that you know, it depends on how we are, of course, right, and what the mobile network operators have deployed in your area. So with Cat 4 and Cat 1 being part of the original 4G LTE standard, that is typically more commonly available. However, with that said, LTM and NB-IoT actually, from a technology perspective, have some features that improve the what's so-called the link budget. So the communication between the cell tower and the remote site. And so what we see is in, let's say, an environment where you have a cell tower and the device cannot talk to the cell tower on Cat 1 or Cat 4, it might still be able to talk with LTM and NB-IoT because of the additional functionality. So these IoT technologies, they slow down, they repeat messages, and they do a couple other things for the signal to come through and punch through the noise.
All right. Shall we move on to the next one then? So we've got another question from, sorry if I butcher this name, Sugiarto Wijaja. Apologies. So the dual SIM model that works for active-active mode. There are quite a few options, but for active-active, Harold, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say in the transport range, you've got the dual module TX54 and TX64. Is that right? Do you want to chime in there?
That is right. Yes. Yeah. So we have some products that have a single cellular radio with dual SIM, right? So there you would fail over from one to the other, and you have a slight interruption. And then we have others with dual cellular radios, and there the failover is seamless without a beep. Good question.
Yeah, no, that's one that comes up quite often because a lot of the time the misconception is having two SIM cards means that you can use both at the same time, but two SIM cards to one cellular module or radio means that that module will only connect to one carrier at a time. And that second SIM card generally will only activate once it switches over. So both can't be connected. So for every connection that you need live, you need to have a separate cellular module within the device itself. We've got quite another good question from Alal Bassett. Can Digi Remote Manager be deployed in a MWAN environment, being that it is disconnected from the internet? Harold, do you want to go? Or?
Yeah, sure. So sometimes this is also called a on-premise installation. So we do not support that today. However, what we do support is, and the way how New York City, for example, has this deployed is that we provide a secure connection from the cloud to through a VPN to the remote site. And so, and Remote Manager itself is audited to strict security standards. So in that scenario, you have a secure connection, and these devices then connect to, they might even be on a private APN, right? So a private cellular island in of itself, but they have the ability to connect to Digi Remote Manager and then have the ability to connect to the customer network.
Yep. Just going through. So we've got another one here. Cat M1 LTE M speed varies in Australia. Is it reliable? Received any positive feedback from your customers? So you're right. It is quite varied. And to be completely honest, it is quite a new technology that's being adopted by the customers that we've seen so far. So the Cat M1 LTE M deployments are few and far between, and I wouldn't say, I personally haven't come across any large scale deployments yet. So it's a bit early for that one, to be honest. But you know, hit us up in about 6 months' time, and hopefully we'll have some good news for you. So what else do we have?
Randy, as business keeps growing too, maybe that'll be an opportunity for Sabir looking for an internship or something to reach out, see if there's some places to learn. Yeah, definitely. I think the contact, always looking for good people, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Sorry, go ahead, Harold.
No, go ahead, Randy.
No, you're right.
Thank you. So, and one thing to note is, so you saw where Digi is present around the world, but one of the things I wanted to point out that we actually have quite a strong R&D presence in Brisbane, Australia, in Milton. So, you know, if you're interested in internships, just reach out to the local team there. You can find that information on our website, right? And it's great to have a strong presence in region, right? And you know, have the engineers on site, right? And or in region, I should say, and be able to they understand the carriers, right? So we have many devices online on Australia networks. So you know, it's a great to have that in region, not just sales and support, which is also great, right? But really have the R&D there that makes sure that really ensures that you know, the technology and the products are reliable and work reliably within region. Other players do not have that.
Yeah, so we've also got the Digi Remote Manager on-prem, which just to sort of, we've worked with a few different proof of concepts with the whole Digi Remote Manager secure tunnel that Harold mentioned. And a lot of the time with large scale deployments, especially when security is a factor, the core may not be connected to the internet where you would want to host Digi Remote Manager. But to that same end, the cellular routers themselves will have a private network that doesn't go out to the internet, but simply routes through your carrier's core into your own core. And what we've done then is set up proxy servers so that all of the edge connectivity information and data and traffic goes back to that core and gets funneled through a proxy server to get to Remote Manager. So while it might seem like opening up, 1,000 routers to Digi Remote Manager that's sitting in the cloud is, a lot more unsecure than you'd like, and there's a lot of points of failure or a lot of access points for security vulnerabilities that can be mitigated by that proxy server architecture as well.
Mm-hmm. And certainly every application is different, but the one thing, going back to the 3 questions, right, or key questions. So think about how your IT infrastructure, how your network infrastructure is evolving over the next years. Pre-COVID, a lot of companies still had data centers on site, right, on-prem. And with COVID, what we've seen is, and they were working on moving more applications to the cloud, right? But with COVID, what we've seen that is a lot of this digital transformation has accelerated, and more traffic is now, or more applications are now in the cloud. The traffic patterns are totally different, right? So you don't need a big data pipe to your main headquarters, for example, anymore, but you do need to have a bigger data pipe, right, from the location where the information is generated to the cloud, and then also security layered on top of that, right? So when I see a lot of these on-prem questions, think about this is what you would do today, maybe, but work with your IT department, right, and see what their plans are 3 years out, 5 years out, right? And obviously talk to us, right? So we want to understand the business you're in, and then show you how you could maybe solve this problem differently and more effectively.
And just to add to that, from a previous life, the digital transformation that Harold was mentioning is very apparent when you get to a point where you're constantly having to do security patches and firmware upgrades, and the I guess management overhead that you have when you've got an on-prem deployment is just greatly outweighed by the convenience of having a managed sort of service provided by Digi, and having gone through all the compliance, security, and auditing, I think the security that they have is far greater than anything that an on-prem solution will be able to achieve, especially from an overhead and maintenance point of view. So one last question that we've got is, tell us about projects that you have completed in remote agricultural areas. So we do have one project that I can tell you about off the top of my head. It's actually a bit of a proof of concept where the partner has actually developed a video system that actually tags their livestock based on a collar, from what I understand, and this camera that they've developed detects the movement of the livestock using this collar, and that information is fed through one of the Digi routers. And I think a big challenge with agriculture, especially, is the remoteness of it. And I think anyone from Australia knows the sheer expanse of the land size is one of our biggest hurdles in terms of coverage and LTE connectivity. And a big factor that's played in the success of that deployment has been the introduction of band 28. So band 28 is 700 megahertz. And as Harold mentioned previously, the lower the frequency, the better penetration it is, because, you know, not to get too much into year 12 physics, but wavelengths and frequencies, there's better coverage essentially. And with the Cat4 module that they're using, they have enough bandwidth to feed through the video information while still having that coverage in remote areas. So look, I know that's a bit vague, but it's just one of the examples that we've done so far. And then
I would probably add to that too, then for this is where supply can really help you, right? Because, you know, the selection of antennas is what Randy had mentioned before, right? So if you're very remote, right, and you might have a cell, you know where the cell tower is, right, then you can work with directional antennas, right, or potentially signal boosters to get connectivity where normally you would not.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So yeah, it is a combination of, you know, the module that you're using, what category, whether it be Cat 1 or NB-IoT or Cat 6, as well as you said, Harold, the antenna type as well. And we've had a lot of customers come to us saying, hey, we've already bought a router, but can you give us some advice? It's not working. And a lot of the time they're using 4G routers without a MIMO antenna or without a secondary antenna used. And that does make a massive difference as well from what we've seen. And the second they've used, you know, the right antenna for what they're trying to do, it has actually improved their situation. So lots of factors to consider. And it's one of those sort of gotcha situations that once you've come across it, you'll never forget that lesson. But until you've seen that, it is something that will catch you off guard.
And Randy, I think that's where it becomes so beneficial to have the years of experience as well between Supply and Digi, having seen some of those things very often before and overcome some of those situations, just to be able to have that wisdom and experience and provide that to the customer, I think is hugely helpful.
Absolutely, yeah. So we are at 10:30, but there is one last question that we'll cover off. So we've got, does Digi have enterprise router solutions? And the answer is yes. We haven't gone into it in too much detail today. So that's obviously going to be a conversation piece for the next webinar that we do, right, Corey? But Digi actually have quite a nice sort of categorization of their cellular router range, where it's broken up into the EX enterprise range, the IX industrial range, and the TX transport range. I won't go too much into it, but it's sort of, as the name suggests, your enterprise range is more for data center situations for high availability or failover or active load balancing. They're not industrial temperature rated. They're not sort of anodized aluminium die-cast enclosures, but they're generally on the higher category end. So whether they be Cat 11 or I think Cat 18, has that been released yet, Harold? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we got Cat 18. Yep.
Yeah, that's right. And same again with the transport. So in the TX range, where you've got your active dual cellular modules, that tends to be the Cat 11, Cat 18, dual Wi-Fi, dual LTE, sort of high-end, used for buses, trains, that sort of thing as well. So Digi cover the whole portfolio, and generally speaking, we've yet to come across a use case that Digi haven't been able to take the technical functionality requirements on. So yeah, look, if there's nothing more pressing, I guess thank you all for joining us and for your questions. That was really good. Anything else you folks want to add?
No, thank you. This was great.
Yeah.
Appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And thank you to Supply for hosting us, and definitely looking forward to the next one.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Take care.
Yeah, thanks.
Cheers.
Ciao.